right, folks, what is going on? This is episode 619 of the First and Frame Rate Show. I am VF Baller. Over here, we talk about Georgia Southern and Atlanta Falcons football. And today we're going to talk about two GSmen, two Georgia Southern men that will be representing Georgia Southern for Sun Belt Media Day, which is July 26th in New Orleans. I think every year they do it in New Orleans. And it's always a good time. You kind of get to see two of the top players from each team in the Sun Belt, what their philosophy is going to be going into the season and what their expectations are. So it's going to be really awesome, not just to see other teams, but to see what Georgia Southern, the type of guys that they're putting on display or what they want to represent for the school of Georgia Southern. Not only just the football program, but the school as well, because, Georgia Southern's always had a pretty good, representation when it comes to the Sun Belt Media Day when they're out there every year, and it's always a good time to see that. And once again, we're going to have a wide receiver, Khaleb Hood, and linebacker Marques Watson-Trent, two guys that if you've been watching Georgia Southern football, you've always seen these guys do some pretty awesome things on the field. So just to have these two guys that are pretty much veterans on the team put in their dues for Georgia Southern, it's going to be really awesome to see what they're going to be talking about at Media Day. So if this is your first time here, welcome. I could be found on YouTube and Rumble. Also, I am on Anchor, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. Check if you're listening to this on Stitcher, please check with your podcast provider. They may be ending Stitcher and moving them over to Pandora. So that's going to be something to look out for. Also, I can be found on Twitter at VFBaller, and the website is firstandframerates.com. So let's go ahead and get into this. Who are these two guys? Who are Khaleb Hood and Marques Watson-Trent? One thing that stands out, if you haven't been paying attention to the roster, because the roster has been recently updated, Marques Watson-Trent is wearing number 1 this year, which is really interesting. I think one year, he wore number 15. I could be wrong, but I knew last year he wore number 33. And now he's jumped to number 1. Usually when you wear number 1, that is a prominent number for the school, outside number 3 and number 8, which, nobody's touching those numbers for obvious reasons. But when you wear number 1, you're usually showing some sign of leadership. So let's get into Marques Watson-Trent first, and we'll talk about Khaleb Hood. Marques Watson-Trent pretty much been at the school since 2020. He played 10 games in 2020, 2021. Did pretty good for himself. Played in 10 games. He had 6 tackles, 7 snaps on special teams. When he played against Campbell, was on the field for 8 special teams against Louisiana, 8 snaps on defense, 11 on special teams. Played 8 snaps against Coastal Carolina, had a tackle against UMass. So basically with him coming in as a freshman, he saw a pretty good bit of playing time, playing in 10 games in 2020, 2021. But basically that was the COVID year. He did a lot for, the team in his freshman year. The second year he played in 1 game, but he tore his ACL in the game against Gardner-Webb. That was the first game. I remember that game. I was at that game. And it's kind of like the beginning of the end of the whole situation with Coach Chad Lunsford, because not only Marques Watson-Trent went down, you had a lot of people get injured that year, and we went down to a 3-9 season, which was really it was a rough one to watch with all the other stuff that's been going on. He bounces back in 2022 and 2023, second team All Sun Belt selection by Phil Steele, played in all 13 games, played a total of 930 total snaps, had one of 6 100 tackles performers in the Sun Belt. So he had over 100 tackles. He had 114 tackles, averaging 8 over almost 9 a game. Had 5.5 tackles for a loss, a sack, plus 3 quarterback hurries, forced fumble, and 3 pass breakups. Had 5 tackles and a quarterback hurry against Morgan State. Had 10 tackles in the legendary game against Nebraska. Got to start at UAB. Had 7 tackles, 1 for a loss. Had a total of 10 tackles against Ball State. Had a half a sack as well. He had a 6 tackles, a half a sack, also a forced fumble against Coastal Carolina, 13 tackles against Georgia State. In the win over James Madison, he had 6 tackles. Was chosen to wear the number 0 jersey, which was a big deal last year. I think they're going to continue that tradition for guys who present leadership throughout the week. Had 8 tackles at Old Dominion in that game when he wore number 0. Had 16 tackles against South Alabama. Had 4 tackles in a quarterback hurry at Louisiana. 12 tackles, including 1 for a loss against Marshall. 8 tackles and a half tackle for a loss against Appalachian State. 9 tackles, 1 for a loss, a half a sack, and 2 pass breakups in the Camellia Bowl against Buffalo. Now, that is a lot. That means that goes to show you from 2020 to 2023, and it's really interesting how great he would have been if he did not tear his ACL. But the fact that he tore his ACL and bounced back to put up a season like that with 100 tackles for the team, no wonder he's going to be representing the school for Media Day. I mean, it doesn't get any better when a guy that plays for for a program like Georgia Southern, guys who are all about selflessness, guys who are ready to to take charge and be a leader in their own right, doing what's right when nobody's looking, always showing that they can be someone to really look up to. Georgia Southern's always had those type of guys who are just blue collar guys that you can look at and be like, you know what, that guy's dependable. You know what, that guy's going to go all out on the field. You know what, that guy's going to show you how to play some football. And he just epitomized that in 2022. Not saying he didn't in the other years, but the way he stepped this game up after a season-ending injury, that's what more could you ask for? So kudos to Marques Watson-Trent. He's going to be one of the guys representing the school at Media Day. The other person, he kind of don't need an introduction. He's been in the school for 5 years. Absolutely been a stud for the team. Done so much. Every time you turn around, he touches the ball, it's going to be a problem. So let's go ahead and get into what he's bringing to the table for him to be a guy that's representing Georgia Southern Media Day. 2019-2020, played in all 13 games, had 8 catches for 98 yards. Now, I want you to understand this. He had 8 catches for 98 yards. 2019-2020, we ran the ball probably 90% of the time, so just keep that in mind. He also carried the ball 3 times for 47 yards, had a passing attempt, made his college debut at the number 6 LSU, the same year that Joe Burrow and them won the national title. He had a 12-yard reception against the Tigers, 3-yard rush, and a 5-yard catch against Maine. 39-yard catch at Minnesota. I do not like talking about the Minnesota game, so yeah. Had a 25-yard run against Coastal Carolina. Was on the field for 15 total plays against 20 Appalachian State. I think that's the game that we beat them. Had a 2-yard catch against Troy. 20 total snaps against ULM. 18 snaps at Arkansas State. 2 catches for 28 yards at Georgia State. Had a 3-yard catch against Liberty in the Cure Bowl and made the honor roll in 2019-2020. All right, now let's look at 2021. I mean, this is a very long rap sheet. I'm just going to try to skim through some things that actually, mean so, because he has done so much. And I don't mean rap sheet in a bad thing. I'm just talking about this guy's put up numbers. So you understand, remember, he had in 13 games, he had 8 catches for 98 yards. Now, in 2021, we still didn't throw the ball as much, but he still had 15 catches for 224 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also carried the ball for 4 times for 22 yards, had 12 punt returns for the average of 10.2 per carry and 1 touchdown. He averaged 16.5 yards on 12 kickoff returns. Now, I could break down every game, but that's pretty much what he did for the entire season. 2021-2022 comes in at honorable mention as Sun Belt accolades from the conference, played all 12 games. Also had, he led the Eagles. Now, he started with 8 in 2019. He jumped to 15 in 2020 and 2021. 2021 and 2022, he had 41 catches for 497, 12.6 yards per catch. Also had 13 rushes for 77 yards. Was the primary kickoff return and punt man. Had 3 catches for 39 in the open against Gardner-Webb. That right there just goes to tell you, it goes down his entire game-by-game basis. So you see where he stepped up his numbers every year. Now in 2022, 2023, this is where, in my opinion, he went absolutely berserk. And he played in all 13 games, starting 9, was on the field for 789 snaps. He was a conference leader in catches per game, had a school record in receptions with 87 receptions and 925. So he more than doubled his receptions in the next season. Now that has a lot to do with Coach Clay Helton coming in and being the coach, and they're going to pass the ball more. So like I said, in 2019, they ran the ball maybe 90% of the time. In 2022, 2023, it's like they threw the ball maybe like 60-40. And you see the difference. Like I said, he had 87 yards for 925, 3 touchdowns, finished the season with the school all-time leader in receptions and second in yards, averaged 7.4 yards per punt and 20 yards on kickoff returns. So you see where all of this, he stepped up his game, had one of awesome games throughout the season. Some games that stand out. He had 6 catches for 82 against Nebraska. He had 11 catches for 122 at Georgia State. He also had 10 catches for 103 versus App State. Also in the ranked game against James Madison, he had 8 catches for 131. So this kid is electric. Not only at wide receiver, he punt and return, kick return. You know, if you need him to run the ball out the backfield, he can do that too. This is another guy that kind of reminds me of Amari Jones. And I would not be surprised. And I would not be surprised if NFL scouts is looking at this kid. If you're going to look at a guy like Amari Jones, if you're going to look at a guy like Najee Thompson, which shout out to Najee Thompson, looks like he's going to make the team up there in Minnesota. Fingers crossed, hopefully that'll be the case. When you look at guys like Amari Jones and Najee Thompson, Khaleb Hood is right behind them as far as that pedigree of a guy who can do it all and absolutely electric with the ball. So 2 guys that are actually representing Georgia Southern Media Day. You got Marques Watson-Trent, which is a tackling machine and knows how to play the position of linebacker very well. After a bounce back season after tearing his ACL, he was one of the top 6 guys in the Sun Belt with over 100 tackles. And you got another guy with Khaleb Hood who basically torched the teams that he played against after having almost 1,000 yards receiving. And not only that, he also was able to, punt, return, and kick return as well. So you got some electrical guys that are electric that actually, are stand-up guys that represent the school very well. And that's all you can ask for. So it's going to be really interesting to see how, they carry themselves, and it shows you what this team represents, what the school represents, and how it could be a trickle-down effect for the underclassmen who will come up and maybe one day they will get a chance to represent Georgia Southern at Media Day. Because when you look at the rest of the roster, which I think the roster just been updated recently, you will see a lot of guys that are on this team that are very talented. Not only that they're very talented, they're actually capable of being one of these guys that could be a leader, that could represent and show off what this school is all about. And at the end of the day, that's all you want. You want guys that are capable of doing those type of things. It's going to be really fun to see. I cannot wait to see how it goes. If you like this commentary, hit the like button, share this podcast, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Let me know what you guys think. Khaleb Hood, Marques Watson-Trent, these 2 guys are going to be representing Media Day. Coach Clay Helton has still been doing a great job with this team ever since he stepped foot on the campus. And you're starting to see what's going on. I mean, from last year when you had Cal Van Treese and you had Dylan Springer representing, 2 guys that are absolutely phenomenal stand-up guys that were leaders on the football team. The following year, you get Khaleb Hood and Watson-Trent. I mean, you can't ask for better than that. I also can be found on YouTube and Rumble, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Google Podcasts. Go check your Stitcher. If you're listening on Stitcher, some things could be changing. I'm also on Twitter at VFBaller, and the website is firstandframerates.com. I am going to get out of here, going to get ready for my Thursday. Hopefully you guys had a great day. Have a great evening, and I'll see you on the next one. Y'all take it easy, and y'all be blessed. Peace.